The average age for moving out from the family home in Europe is 26.2 years old, and in Spain it is 30.3 years old. Today we're talking about independence and moving out. And as usual, I am joined by my dad. And it is another special episode because my mum is also joining us.
Hello.
And like usual, I am your host, Gabriel Chavarria-Sode, and welcome to another episode of the Son of a Podcast. Do you guys want to say anything before we get right into it?
Nothing. Let's get going. As usual, just to remind everybody that we break down these long episodes into smaller ones that we release throughout the week. So look out for those. If you don't feel like watching the big, long, boring one, you can watch the very exciting little ones. Yeah. Let's go for it. So moving out and independence. What are we talking about?
Moving out. Well, you said it. Moving out and independence.
Exactly.
We'll focus more on the independent side because we kind of talked about moving out quite a bit in one of our first episodes we did.
Yeah, we had one specifically on your moving out as a 19-year-old.
Moving abroad.
Moving abroad, yes. This is actually moving out from the family home.
Yes.
And getting independence, yes.
And this is... We briefly mentioned about me not feeling independent, but I'll properly get in depth into it today. But first I want to ask you guys, so when you moved to Madrid when you were 19, right?
Approximately 19.
Approximately 19.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. Around 19.
18, 19, 20, let's say around there. Did you feel independent when you moved up there?
I certainly felt I had a step forward towards independence, yes. Mm-hmm. Obviously I wasn't financially independent yet. The first few months I lived with friends of my parents, a family friend, some Nicaraguan family. And there I did pretty much have my own time. I did my own thing. After that, they weren't very happy with me living there for so long. So I moved in with my uncles and my aunts, my mom's family. Mm-hmm. And there I lost independence because there I was suddenly living again with my family and they treated me like a member of the family. So I had to have meals with them. I had to have, but it was semi-independent. I could do my own thing. I was doing my course in Madrid. I was studying and I was working a little bit too. So it was half-half. I don't feel I gained full independence until I got to the UK.
Okay.
A couple of years after that.
Yeah. And at that point, did you feel independent?
In Madrid?
In Madrid, yeah.
Yeah, of sorts. As I say, it was a step forward. Mm-hmm. As opposed to being in the family house with my parents where I had to basically follow their routine rather than my own.
Yeah.
And obviously being with your parents at home means, it sounds bad, but, helping out in the house and all that to help your mom and your dad, things like that. It's not being independent at all. I had graduated from school. I was already an adult. But I had moved out and I did not feel independent at all. In Madrid, halfway.
Okay. And your story is quite different, isn't it? Because you still lived with your parents until you were 22?
Well, yes and no. When I was 16, I went to England to live with my older brother for a year.
Yeah, but that
You're not counting that.
No, that is not counting that.
But you were independent then, no?
I was independent then.
Yeah, but... Okay, fine, let's start with that then. Let's start with that.
Yeah, Paul didn't look after me.
So
I did.
At 16, you moved to Leeds with your brother Paul.
Yeah. And I did the shopping, the cooking, the cleaning.
I think we have to differentiate between what we mean by independence because there's two sides. There's the personal independence and then there's the financial independence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Obviously, you can't gain financial independence until you have your own job. Like in your case, we send you money every month, so you're financially independent in that sense. But it's our money; it's not your money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I wouldn't say I'm financially independent at all, though.
Exactly. So because we're sending you money, so you're stuck with that, and you can't, you have a limited budget, but it's not your money, right? So you're independent, but you're not financially independent.
Yeah.
So I think there's two sides to that thing. And in my case in Madrid, I wasn't financially independent because I worked for free, believe it or not. Never do that to your children. Parents, never do that to your children. Never get them to work for free. It is useless. And so I was semi-independent, but I was not financially independent at all. Mm-hmm. And in your case in Leeds as well, no?
In Leeds, my parents, I was independent, but not financially independent. I became fully independent, as you said, when I was 22, where I had the luck through my work to be able to buy my own apartment. So I moved. I had the apartment for a few years, but was paying off debts that I had incurred with it. So I rented it out, and once I paid the debts off, then I moved in.
Yeah. And at that point, you were fully
Independent.
Can you just mention how much an apartment was back in that time? At that time,
Yep, I bought it under special circumstances. I bought it in an auction.
from the bank,
From
bank
a bank
requisition.
Yeah, bank repossession. And it was... it's good.
Say it. Tell our people how much
About 15,000 euros.
for a 4-bedroom apartment.
3-bedroom.
3-bedroom apartment.
That was bank repossession, but those apartments being normally sold were sold for about 45,000 euros at that time.
45,000 euros, and now
That was 30 years ago.
Now it's more or less quadrupled
10
the
times
price.
more. It's 10 times more. Yeah.
10 now.
10 now.
10 times more than I bought it for, but not market price. It's worth about 180,000 euros.
Yeah. So, cost of living crisis, people.
Yes.
But that's not our...
But
Maybe for a
we're not
future
here.
episode where we are all...
there I was fully independent. My boyfriend at the time moved in with me as well. And yeah.
There you were working as well, right? So you
I
were
was
fully
working.
independent. then.
Yeah, I was working.
And that was 22.
Yeah.
22, far removed from the average in Spain, which is what you say?
In Spain, it's 30.3. But I think that's for men, isn't it? It's not...
Yeah. Well,
not-
yeah. Apparently, women tend to be independent a little bit younger than that.
Yeah.
But
That's the average. That's the average.
Do
Yeah.
you know why? Because not always, but generally in couples, the man is older than the woman.
Mm-hmm.
So it's couples that normally,
Yeah.
especially nowadays, it's very rare that a person can afford to become independent by themselves.
Yeah.
They need to do it with someone else. So it's couples, and generally the man
Yeah.
is a couple.
Well, that's something that's also changed quite a bit throughout the years. Is the fact that now even financial independence doesn't guarantee that you can actually move out from your parents'
That you
house.
can afford to
very
move
true.
out.
Right, because there's that myth. Some people say it's a myth. Some people it's not. That when you have to buy a house when to be independent, right? Renting a house or renting a flat doesn't really make you independent because it's not your property. It's not you're just throwing your money away. But it is true that even if you want to move out, you have to pay deposits for the rent, etc., and it's not easy. You have to save up, things like that.
And rents are so expensive nowadays.
Yeah, I was going to say, now the rents aren't particularly cheap anymore, are they?
Yeah.
And so then you say, once you fully moved to the UK,
Yeah.
to England, you were renting and you had your own house and you had your own job, and there you felt you were fully independent because obviously you
100%.
weren't receiving money from your parents.
Yes.
So you had both personal independence, I guess, and financial
And
independence.
financial independence. I was with a very controlling girlfriend, which kind of took that away from that, but that is another story for another time. Bless her, you don't want to disrespect people that can't defend themselves. But yes, I was finally independent. I felt independent. I could do whatever I wanted. My problems were my own. They weren't my parents' problems. And I was not receiving any money from them, so I was fully independent.
Okay. But you also say, I guess you were independent before you moved out, weren't
Yeah.
you, Mum? Because you were, yes, explain the
Yeah,
situation before.
I was working, even before I was 19, but I was working with your grandparents before 19, but then they sold their business and I had a job from when I was 19. In fact, most of the time I had 2 jobs. And I was financially independent at that point. My parents being Scandinavian, I would help out paying the bills, the household bills, and generally have meals together, at least one meal a day, but in and out, lived practically independent, could do as I wish.
Because that's one thing I would like to say, is that just because you haven't moved out doesn't mean you're not independent, right?
Right.
Because I feel like that's quite an old-fashioned way to think about it. Of if you haven't moved out, then you're not independent. You're still leeching off of your parents.
I think that's also a sign of the times, and the fact that I think back in the 1970s, independence actually meant moving out, getting married, having a job, and buying your own house. Nowadays, independence is mostly a personal financial independence, rather than that whole the whole package, right?
Yeah.
So you might be financially independent but still living with your parents, or even you might be mature enough to have a relationship with your parents, which I think was your case, trusting enough, but which you can have your independence even before you're even close to being able to leave the house or to be financially independent, right? And I think that was your case. You were always living with us till you graduated, and yet I think from the time you were maybe 15 and a half, we pretty much left you to your own devices. You made your own decisions.
That sounds like we sort of...
No, but we didn't question you, right? You know what I mean? I mean, is that
we let you make your own decisions.
Exactly. You were in the house, and you depended on us, and we had dinner together. We always do when you're here at home. But you were in control of your own life. You decided what GCSEs you took. You decided what A-levels you took. You decided what your future was going to be, and the only permission you had to ask from us was when you needed our money, to buy games or whatever it was, right? I think that's what I mean.
Yeah.
And of course, once you got old enough to go out with your friends and to do your things, you didn't ask us for permission to go out. You just said, I'm going out this weekend, right?
Yeah.
And as long as you kept in touch while you were out, we didn't really care what time you got back, right? That's what I mean by independence. There's a lot of families who don't do that, don't allow that. I mean, you might know from your friends, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Whose parents are more controlling or more protective. Not controlling, protective I think is the better word. And those children are treated like children till much later. Having said that, I've seen a cool statistic here which says psychologists and neuroscientists now suggest that adolescence technically lasts until the age of 25.
Adolescence?
Yeah.
Isn't adolescence before?
It's like your teenage
years, yeah. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for impulse control and planning, is not fully developed until the mid-20s. Does that have an influence in independence? I don't know, but
I don't know.
There might be something there. I mean, I know that when I was 25, I was not even close to, like, say, starting a family, for instance, or getting married or anything like that. I was a dweeb. I was still experimenting. I was still living life. I wasn't, oh my God, or even buying a house for that matter. However, I was alone.
Yeah,
most of my peers were dying to take that step already.
Yeah, because for example, for me, right now, I don't live with you guys anymore. Or for half of the year, I don't live with you guys, I should say, because the other half I do during holidays, summer, Christmas, I stay here and I live with you guys here. But the other half, I'm in Ireland. I'm by myself. I do my own shopping. I cook for myself. I do my own laundry. I wash my own dishes. So obviously, in that sense, I'm independent, but I am not financially independent at all yet, hopefully.
And do you feel independent? Do you feel like you're in control of your own life?
I feel like I'm in control of my own life, but in certain situations, I guess, in a sense. Because obviously I'm still in school, so in university, I still go to classes and stuff, and I still have to do homework and show up to
but that's routine.
exams.
I mean, once
like
you
when
finish,
you get a job, you still have to. You have to go to work. You have a certain time amount of hours you have to work.
But I feel like in a job, it's easier to be like, have more control, because you apply to obviously I'll just be applying to everything, so it's different, but you want to go to that job, and if you're not happy with that job, then you can try to search for something else. But right now I could do that, but it would be a major setback in a way, and also financially we can't really do that right now, because university is also expensive. So right now I'm kind of, thankfully I like what I'm doing, so I was
getting worried there. I was going to say, do you want to change something you haven't told us?
We're changing the subject of this podcast.
No, but thankfully, but for example, like I have friends that didn't like what they're doing, so they've changed course and are in the course that I'm doing, and now they're in second year, but they've been in university for 4 years, Yeah. So it's just that, where right now and also because I receive money from you guys, so I'm not fully financially independent.
True.
So I feel halfway independent, you know.
But the independence you have now, what you're saying with the shopping and cooking and cleaning up after yourself, that is a big life. How would you say it? If
it is a stepping stone,
and it is a
landmark.
Yeah, it's learning how to look after yourself. Is
definitely one of the big things
of independence.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess for me it doesn't seem like a big thing because I think I've always grown up. You brought me up kind of aware of those things. I feel like a lot of people are grown up kind of not really aware of they just get the clean clothes in their room. They're like, oh, the magic fairy.
The magic fairy.
Well, do you think this is something, again, going back to my field, which is education? Do you think this is something that's lacking in the modern world, not just from parents' education, but also for school education? Once you graduated, once you stepped out of that airplane for the first time on your own, did you feel prepared for that? Did you feel that your previous life had prepared you for that moment? Or did you feel that you had to learn everything from scratch on your own?
I felt prepared, but not because of school, because of you guys, if that makes sense. The thing is, at school, it kind of prepares you for the new educational side. Sorry,
University.
Yeah, university. It prepares you for, obviously, to get into university, which I guess is one of the big things, because that decides where you're going to end up. But also prepares you on how to study and how to do that. But that's pretty much it. It doesn't really prepare you on the living by yourself on
the practicalities of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think? Oh, sorry. Go.
No, I always thought that it would be useful to have like short courses in cooking, economics, fixing. For example, I don't know anything about basic plumbing and electrics, like changing a plug. I think that would be like really sort of useful. I know you don't. I know. That's why if something electrical breaks in the house, it stays broken.
It stays broken.
We bought a new lamp for the bedroom about 1.5 years ago.
So yeah, moving on. Do you think educational institutions should offer that kind of thing? Do you think your teachers and your schooling could have done something to prepare you, not just for the educational side of going to university, but also or do you think that's more of a family thing?
I mean, realistically, it should, but I don't know if there's enough time. You know, I feel like there's already a lot going on in school. So for me, I had 3 periods, and I'm gonna be honest, I didn't use those 3 periods well. I was pretty much not doing much during those 3 periods. So I guess during those extra times, you could be learning about taxes or whatever. But at the same time, I probably wouldn't have paid attention. I'd probably been like, this isn't...
Well, that's what I mean. Maybe you feel like that it's too far removed from your...
Yeah, I feel like it's something that maybe apart from maybe during the last year, but during the last year of your schooling, you kind of focused on the exams and you kind of stressed with that. So adding a new class in, filling the time up, probably wouldn't help. And also, I didn't use those times, but I know a lot of people that did use that time, especially during the last year, that they were doing homework, they were studying, and they were actually doing something productive during those times, unlike me. So yes, but also no. You know, right. I feel like it's kind of like PSHE, where at the beginning you start doing PSHE in year 7, and it kind of like it's useful.
A lot of it is you're not okay. And do you now feel that you are mature enough at that age to move out and to be independent and to follow your own?
Yeah, I think at 18 or right now.
At 18, yeah.
At 18, I think I was prepared. I feel like it's all mentality though. You have to be in the right mindset. If I didn't prepare myself mentally of being.
You were also looking
providing.
forward to.
Yeah, I was also looking forward to it, but also providing for myself, and like in the sense of having to cook for myself, do my own laundry, do my own dishes, and it just dropped me, and I probably been like, whoa, what the hell? You know what I mean? And I would have probably been a bit lost and probably hated it for the first month. and then afterwards I probably would have got the ball rolling, got used to it. But because I was already looking forward to it, like Mom said, yeah, that was a big help, and I was already preparing myself mentally for that change, that huge dramatic change.
Great. Well, in fact, let me rephrase that question.
Okay.
If we didn't have the funds to fund your university studies, if school hadn't trained you to go abroad, right? Seeing as you're in a British school in Spain, they pretty much train you to finish. Instead of staying in Spain, you go abroad.
You go abroad.
Would you have done it yourself, or would you have stayed living with us, trying to find a job, or taking indefinite gap years till you're 30.3 years of age?
That's a very good question, because I don't know. I guess I probably would have stayed here and gone to university here. That's my guess, because it's, or maybe not. Maybe you guys would have told me. It all depends, because like you said, it was kind of ingrained in my mind that I knew I was going to end up outside of Spain, whether that's in the Netherlands, in Denmark, in Ireland, in the UK, wherever. I knew I was going to end up there. So,
but the idea of independence, what was ingrained in you, what you've been trained for, was to study away from home.
Yeah.
Which is very different to having been trained to be independent away from home, right? So my question really is, if you stayed here and you'd gone to Spanish university, would you still be thinking, well, how can I move out while I'm studying here in Malaga? I need to move out from my parents so I can have my own life. Or will you be perfectly happy to stay with us until you're 24, 25 to finish your master's, your doctorate, or whatever?
I would have been perfectly happy to stay here and live with you guys and coexist with you guys, I suppose. But I probably would be like how I am right now. Probably would have, during my second year, like right now, I probably would be saying, okay, I need to find my own job. I need to kind of explore a bit and be able to be even more independent, I guess financially independent. I would be fully financially independent if I lived here, and I probably would.
That's funny, because if I remember rightly, back in the day when I graduated, when I was 18, it was both. We were dying to go abroad to study because that's what we've been taught to do. Obviously, university was always been not just the next step, but also the safest next step for anybody, because you're in a controlled environment, and you're not left to your own devices. However, we were all dying to have that independence. I don't know if it was a thing from here in this, because we were such a small community back in the day, Torremolinos and Malaga here, there was hardly any people that we really, really knew, apart from ours. We just needed to go out and live the life, and find our own experiences. There was hardly any question of us staying at home,
Yeah.
And I think I would have done anything possible to leave my parents' house as soon as possible, especially because I didn't go to university. I knew I wasn't going to go to university, so I needed to find my own way. But I think it wasn't just me. I think it was everybody else. It was just different times. And then, of course, recession hit, and we had no jobs and had nowhere to go anyway. So that changed everything. But before that, it was like, full steam ahead.
Well, I think, like you said, that just shows the way that times have changed. Back then, it wasn't seen as something normal to still be 25 and be living at home with your parents. It was kind of something that would be like, oh, that's kind of weird, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah, not in our society. I think in the Spanish society, all my Spanish friends and all my cousins, for instance, and all my Spanish family, as far as I know, all of them stayed home till they got married.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. You have to also think that it was only our generation when it started, especially women, moving out before they got married. Up to then, all traditional families, a girl couldn't move out unless she got married.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially here in Spain, which is still very traditional Catholic type country.
Yeah.
But my sisters, in fact, my sisters didn't move out until they finished their studies, and they naturally progressed into finding a job. And then they both had their partners, and then they move away. But until then, There was no question. It was taken for granted that they would be staying home.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
Teresa finished her studies in Madrid, didn't she?
She finished her studies in Madrid. Yeah, I think.
She, yeah, she,
I can't remember. So different times.
Yeah, but well, answering your first question, I guess I would want to find a job first, and then after I finish my studies, wherever I get a job, I would move there, or if I get a job here, I would be there, and then I would eventually move out. But yeah, obviously that's not what's happening right now. So so right now I'm in Ireland, and I'm halfway independent, I'd say. Personally, like I said, I'm independent, but financially not. But as we've discussed here, and I think I briefly mentioned it in an episode before, I don't know, but I am going to try to find a job in this new semester. So hopefully I'll be more financially independent, because obviously you guys will still be sending me more money, or not, depends on how much I get paid and if I get a job. Because if I get a job and I get paid more than enough to just live on that, then maybe you guys want to send me money. Or
Sorry.
if I don't get a job, then obviously I'll still need you guys' money, because not, then I'm just be screwed. But
Okay.
you know, right now is a bit of a
And how do you see yourself after you finish your studies? You have, say you finish your 3 or 4 years, 3 years you have left.
yeah.
By that time you'll be all of 21, 22 years old. Obviously the leap after that is to find a job, which you probably will start doing before that, right?
Yeah.
Because you have your end of your projects and your internships and all that. But would you say, okay, now I'm finished here, let me find a job so I can continue my independence? Or will you say, Dad, Mom, I finished my degree, I'm going back home until I find a job?
It depends. So I've actually got this question quite a bit during this Christmas, with the family coming over asking, oh, so where do you think you'll be in the future after university? What? Honestly, right now, I don't know what will happen. Obviously, after I finish my degree, it'll be 5 years, hopefully. It'll be 5 years after I started. So I'll be 22, 23, around there. And I guess I'll kind of see what I do from there. If I do a master's or if I go straight into work, I don't know. I don't know what I'll do. Probably ask around in the university, say, what do you guys think I should do?
Well, I can tell you what the academics are going to tell you. Do your master's and then your doctorate.
No, but the thing, because you have to think, a lot of my teachers aren't doctors. Most of them aren't doctors. And a lot of them have worked in the field and are kind of then just turned into lecturers.
Yeah.
And a lot of them do say it's good to get some work experience, but I don't know, maybe they say, I think it would be beneficial for you to get a master's. But let's say they say go to work, because I guess that's the main and more interesting answer than just do masters, because that just entails a few more years of university and it's basically the same life. I think I would either probably stay in Ireland and find a job there, or move to a different country and find a job there.
All right, so your immediate plans aren't to come here and ask for asylum while you find a job?
I would only do that if I see after a few months I really haven't found anything and I'm really up the creek.
Right.
Then I probably would be like, guys, could I move in with you? Like get maybe a part-time job here, and then while I'm applying to other places, or I don't know. It also depends, maybe because obviously I would be staying in Parchment Square, I guess. So maybe I would have to move back here because I wouldn't have an apartment there. So it all depends.
But initially you say, okay, now I'm independent, I'll stay independent rather than go back to my parents.
Yeah, probably, because I feel like it's a lot easier that way, because I would be open to moving basically anywhere in the world. So I think it would be a lot easier to just take all my stuff that I have there and go wherever, instead of taking all my stuff here, staying here for a while, getting comfortable, and then having to leave again. You know, I feel like it's...
Well, it's following a momentum, isn't it? Once you have the momentum of independence, it's easier to follow that rather than stop it, because after that, it's harder to continue.
Yeah.
That's a little bit what happened to me after I got sick of being in England. I did ask my parents for asylum.
Yeah.
So that I could gather my bearings and try to find a job here in Spain. And it took me ages. It took me like a year and a half to be able to get back on my feet. And a lot of it was due to the fact that once I got here, it was just too easy to fall back into the routine of having your lunch made for you and then your clothes washed for you. And it is too easy to do that, even though I'd already been independent for like almost 4 years by then, or 5 years.
Yeah, of course.
And it is easy to fall back into that. That's why the gap year things are a little bit dangerous, you know. Cool. And if you're speaking to our audience, what advice would you give to people your age that are wondering whether they should take the independent leap or not?
Well, I think you guys should do it, honestly. I think it's something unique, and at the end of the day, it's something that is going to inevitably happen, whether it's sooner or later, honestly. Unless it's extreme circumstances, but you're going to eventually move out. So I think the earlier you are able to be independent, the better. And you know, sometimes people are fully independent. They wash their own clothes, they make their own meals, they do whatever they want while they're still living with their parents. And if that happens, then I guess it's fine to stay living there, because you already experience what it is to just be able to sustain yourself in a way. But that's generally not the case.
No.
Frankly.
So if somebody's thinking of doing it, but they don't know how to do it, what would your advice be to how to take the leap to do that?
Find something that motivates you to be able to make the leap. Because if there's something that is makes you have to take the leap, then you're going to do it no matter what. Like me with university, I probably wouldn't take the leap if I didn't have to move to Ireland to go to university, because frankly it's nice and comfortable here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if there's something that makes you jump yes or yes, then you're going to jump. You know, it's kind of like, I feel like when people are scared to do bungee jumping, you know, and the instructor has to push you off, because if not, they're not going to do it. Well, the same thing. I'm pretty sure let's not say bungee jump, but let's say the parachutes. If the plane was falling out the sky, you're going to jump. You know what I mean? You're not going to hesitate. So it's the same thing. Imagine the house was burning down and you're going to leave the house.
Well, it's definitely true. The only way to do something is by doing it.
Exactly.
If you didn't do it, you didn't do it.
Well, I'm not saying to just do it. I'm saying that you have to have something that justifies you doing it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Motivates you.
That motivates you to do it. Because if not, then it's going to be really hard, because you can be like, what's the point of me? You're not going to want to do it, or you're not going to see the reason why I should do it. You know?
Yeah.
Whether it's a job somewhere else, or it's university, or maybe it's a girl or a guy or whatever. Just something that motivates you or makes you want to do it.
Right.
I think that's what they should find. And if they don't, then that's also fine.
And
I guess.
And what's your advice to those people whose parents, because obviously we're assuming that everybody wants to be independent, which isn't true. But we're also assuming that parents want their children to be independent, which is not true at all either, especially in these days. A lot of parents prefer their children to be at home for as much as possible, because they just feel more close to them and more protective, or, you know, it's not...
Yeah, of course.
So what's your advice to those parents? Do you think that's a good idea? Do you think that's bad? Is it just a sign of the times? Or do you think the sooner the better? Do you think those parents should let go of their children as soon as possible?
I think the parents, there comes a point when the parents should just let their children do whatever they want, because they're old enough to be able to make rational decisions. And whether the parents think that it's right or wrong, they can obviously express their opinion, because at the end of the day, you're my parents. Because if you think I'm doing something wrong, you guys would say it. But if I still make that decision, you guys, frankly, you can't do anything about it, you know? Just if it blows up on my face, and you guys can say, "I told you
so."
That's what we've been telling you since you were maybe 15 or so. We always, I think, our advice to you is always saying, "I'm going to tell you this because I'm your father, and it's my job and duty to tell you. But then you can do whatever the hell you want with that advice, right? Maybe it's not the best advice to give a child, but that's the approach we've always taken, and it seems to have worked. Yeah.
Well, that's because most of the time I know you guys are right, because deep down what I'm kind of explaining I know is not really the right thing to do. But in this case, let's say it's a 26-year-old guy and they wanna move out, and the parents are like, no, you have to stay. Then if the person has a valid reason, and
so as a young person, what's your advice to those parents who just refuse to let their children leave the nest without even questioning whether their child wants to or not, which could be a thing, right?
I think the best thing to do is just sit down with your, I don't want to say child, with your son or daughter, because they're not children at our point, I guess, anymore. I guess we kind of still are, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Just sit down and have a proper conversation of why they want to do it. See if they have proper reason, if there's actually a plan or logic behind it. If there is, then what's the reason to be scared, Obviously you can't miss them, but it is what it is. It's, like I said, it's going to happen eventually.
You have to live your own lives.
And
I think something that we're not touching upon is, and I don't know if Mommy will agree with me, is the personal satisfaction that comes with the first steps of independence. Things that may seem like a pain in the butt, things that are scary, things that are even trivial at first, when you've never ever done them yourself and you finally do them yourself. Things like opening your first bank account, or getting your first phone card, or your first phone contract, or whatever it is, or even making your own first meal. All that is, at least if I remember rightly from my time, all that is very satisfying at first. You finally say, nobody prepares you for it, but once you start doing it, you think, oh, wow, man, I'm doing this on my own. I've decided to make my meal today and decided to have chicken instead of eggs. I've actually gone to that shop and sorted it out myself, and I'm back and I've done it myself without having to ask my parents how it's done, or without holding my mom's hand or my dad's hand while doing it. And that's something that a lot of people don't think about, because they're considered just, things that you do anyway. Right? Yeah. If you're an adult, that's what you do. You go to the bank to sort things out, or you go to the electrician. You call an electrician, things like that. But if you've never done them before, you have to bear in mind that those things are cool. It's exciting to do those things for the first time. I mean, I don't know if that's been your case in the last couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, maybe not the kind of menial things like the doing your own laundry and stuff like that. I kind of just did, because I had to. I wasn't really like excited about doing it. I wasn't like, oh yay, finally my first laundry. My first batch of laundry. I was kind of like.
Yeah, but at one point, didn't you think like, hey, Mom would be proud of me?
More for the cooking stuff, because I think the laundry is kind of like.
Yeah, laundry might be a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah,
as far as personal satisfaction.
I guess it is kind of true that it is quite satisfying. But for me, what was very satisfying was especially it was the latest thing I did was the getting my own my social security number, I guess, from in Ireland, because I did that all by myself. I had to, fill the forms out. I had to get my proof of residency from Linda, and I had to like follow up on her and ask her for it again, and then I had to go there. And thankfully, it wasn't a very easy process and very straightforward, thankfully. So it wasn't super complicated, because I'm European, so it makes it a lot easier. But it now that I think about it, it is quite a big thing, because it is probably it is my first proper piece of documentation and kind of, I guess,
bureaucratic process.
Government issued thing that I've done by myself fully. Because normally I've done it basically entirely with Mum, because you kind of work with paperwork and
she knows the ropes.
And you know the ropes, and also everyone here, so it's a lot faster and quicker when you do it. So yeah, I think that's probably the thing that made me the most proud, I guess. Especially when I got it in the mail.
Well, it's definitely a good feeling. It really is.
Yeah, and I think that what I'm especially excited for is kind of finding my first solo job, I guess, because right now all the jobs that I've done have been thanks to you and thanks to having been in school and kind of having known everyone there basically my entire life. So they've seen me growing up and they know who I am. Whereas now it's in a place where no one knows me.
Start from zero.
Yeah, and I guess I have to find my own job, my own way, you know, by asking friends if there's free spaces in where they are, and also using my own initiative of going out to places and hanging out my CV and you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But anyways, the social security number, yes, I think that was the thing that I found the most. Cool. I don't know how to say, like, again, not satisfying. There we go. Thank you. I was going to say indulging, but that's not the right word at all.
No.
What was the first thing that you guys found that was like that for you guys, obviously, if you remember?
I can't remember, to be honest. It must have been probably getting my first bank account and my debit card back in the UK, because that was again, that was something that I was alone. Nobody taught me how to do it. I just had to figure out. I think somebody told me go to Lloyd's Bank, and because they have great deals for young people, but of course young people that were studying. I wasn't studying. I was just an old guy.
Yeah.
I suppose it must have been that. I can't really remember, to be honest, because eventually you get used to all those things, right? So they become a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Once you start getting used to them. But before they're exciting.
I think for me, probably, even though I had a lot of liberty living with my parents, it's probably the being able to make 100% my own choices, like getting my first dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or as it's just shopping when you want, eating when you want, eating what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Those
Waking up in the morning and
waking
saying, okay, what should I do today? You know, what should I do today? Nobody's here to tell me what to do. Yeah. And that is really satisfying. Yeah.
It is.
I remember getting off the plane in the UK for the first time. It was dark. It was at night. But I do remember getting off the plane in the freezing cold and thinking, this is, everything. I couldn't smell the sea anymore for the first time in my life. Right?
That I didn't like.
But I felt, this is mine. From now on, all this is mine. It's not nobody else's to share. Nobody has put me here. I put me here myself here, and I thought that was really good. That was a great feeling. So my advice to anybody that's thinking about it, or that wants to take the leap but can't, or doesn't feel they can, I would encourage them to find a reason and do it, because that is very satisfying when you're young.
It is.
When you're young. And the older you get, the less satisfying it is. Because, of course, if you're living with your parents at 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, a lot of that stuff you have to do anyway. But it's not the same as when you're doing it on your own.
Yeah.
Right? And you're doing it more almost under duress. So like, I got to do it because my parents are just getting so pissed off with me with using their phone, right? I got to get my own phone, you know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But if you take the leap and you do it and you do it yourself because you want to and because you have to do it yourself, it's a huge difference. So I would encourage anybody to do it.
Yeah, definitely.
And also it helps the world economy, for Christ's sake. Let's move out there.
Yeah, it's funny that it just goes to show how times have changed. Though we were saying that a big thing for you was getting your first bank account and everything like that, but for me, I guess my first bank account that I got fully by myself was the Revolut one.
Yeah.
And that was
fully online.
It was fully online.
Fully
right?
online. I downloaded
to.
the app. I signed in, and that's basically it.
Yeah, you didn't have to talk to anyone.
I didn't have to talk to him. I didn't have to go anywhere. I didn't have to fill any papers. So it's kind of funny. I think about it, I'm like, oh, it is actually my own bank account. Is under my name, and it's fully mine.
Excuse me.
But it doesn't feel like it because I just downloaded an app and I signed in and I just accepted terms and services and that's it, And
that's it. Yeah, that's true. Times have changed for that. Yeah.
Exactly. I just took a photo of my passport or whatever it was. I forgot what it was at the time.
Yeah.
So it is.
But when you go to the supermarket and you buy your food, is the food that you decide to get. It's not the food that your mom's asked you to get because she's going to be cooking whatever your dad, right? It's, and, you know, and that's very cool. That's always cool. Once you get used to it, it's routine. But at first, I think it's great.
No, it is cool. It's cool, but it's also kind of, I guess, I could see how it is a bit like overwhelming in a way, because there's so much, and you're like, what do I get for this week? You know, luckily for me, I had a very, especially this year, I've got a very
specific plan.
I have a very militaristic type of meal plan. Don't I? I have literally the same thing every single day. So it's when I go shopping, it's literally autopilot, and I go there, boom, 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 get the same aisle, the same place.
Anyway, How about you? I mean, what's your advice to parents who are reticent to leave their children, or to allow, or want to keep their children for as long as possible because they just love them so much?
My advice is you have to let them spread their wings, because
leave the nest.
Leave the nest. At the end of the day, you're not doing them any favors, because they're not going to go out into the world and not know how to do things. I know instances of people in their mid-20s who haven't even been on public transport before.
Yeah. Well, if they have their own car, then I guess it's kind of fine. But if they get driven everywhere, that's a bit weird.
It's now the second, but it was the first at one point.
Oh, yeah.
You're not going to learn how to live unless you do live.
Yeah, that's true.
It's easier for everybody in the end. It's easier for the parents' pockets. It's easier for the son and daughters, or the children. Sorry for using the word pockets, because they'll get their own independence and they know how much they need, and they can try to work accordingly. I do realize that this isn't easy for everybody. You know, I mean, we're not stupid here. We're not living in a little dream world. But I really do think that if there's a will, there's a way. And I think we as parents should do our best to train our children for that inevitable step.
Yeah.
And just because we love them doesn't mean that they have to be by our side all the time. You know, we can love them more by being, distance makes the heart grow fonder, they say, right? And I think, as a final bit of advice, I think that's what I would tell parents, same as mommy. I would say, let them go. Yeah, let them go. And what is the age, right? Because obviously, in our sense, we're a middle class family, and everything is centered around studies, going to school, finishing your studies, going to university. However, once you're 16, here in Spain anyway, if you have your parents' permission, you can be fully independent already. You can work, you can not. Do you think that's too young? Do you think that's
16?
Yeah. Do you think a 16-year-old is prepared for that leap, or is it?
Obviously, it always depends on every single person. But I definitely wasn't. I definitely wasn't ready at 16. I think it's very circumstantial and situational, it's different for each person.
I think it's very young, but there will be people that are able and are prepared.
Frankly, you did it, didn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, but
I know I wasn't prepared at all.
I wasn't prepared either. But I think I would say after 18, and once you kind of matured a bit in a sense, because obviously, even though I feel like I'm mature, I still haven't finished maturing. I still feel like there's a long way for me to go. I've always thought
you're very mature for your age.
Yeah.
At each level, at each age you've been.
Yeah, we also thought you were a genius.
But anyways,
still do.
Anyways, it doesn't matter. We're getting off topic.
Just joking.
And we, so obviously it's very different for every single person. But I think after 18, kind of, I feel like that's when.
I agree.
When you can start moving out, whether you don't right away or you do later on, then obviously that depends on every single person. But I always say sooner rather than later.
I think 16, 17 is when you're starting to be borderline. My experiences with the students at school, the ones that go into the sixth form, the year 12 and 13, so they're 17, 18. I think they're fully ready to do their own thing. What's stopping them is the complete and utter lack of experience they have in any kind of field. They have no idea how to do anything. And I'm not talking about just the practical things like opening a bank account and doing your own shopping. I'm talking about things like relating to other adults and their peers in a way that will make them flourish. See what I mean? And I think that's where maybe schools lack a little bit. I think they should learn those little skills so that when you're thrown in a world of adults, you can navigate that world easily, knowing how to talk to other adults in the way that they're expecting. So it's a symbiosis. I think right now that's the only thing that I would say. However, mentally they're fully prepared. I think at 17 you're ready to go, no problem.
Yeah, but I feel like moving out or kind of learning to be fully independent is a bit of a trial by fire, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
It's kind of like riding a bike, where you start off with training with training wheels, Well,
that's the ideal way to do it.
And then you kind of just have to let go of you take them off and you run with them a bit and you just have to let go, Because if not, then they're not going to just be able to prove to themselves that they can do it.
Yeah.
Because that's the end up what happens with bikes, isn't it? They can perfectly do it by themselves, but they don't believe in themselves. They don't think they can do it, so they don't do it. They get scared and they fall off.
Yeah.
That's true.
So it's the same, more or less, same concept.
Yeah.
And obviously this is not talking about extreme circumstances, this is in normal circumstances where you can do it and you're allowed to do it.
Yeah, of course.
Because just want to clarify that.
Yeah, we all know that there's extremes, there's people that can, people that can't, family circumstances are totally different.
Yeah, exactly.
We all totally understand that. But if you can, as you say, bit by bit is the way to do it. And the sooner the better, to be honest. The sooner the better.
I agree. Well, I think that's a good place to stop it.
Yeah, perfect.
I think we've said what we have to say.
Yeah, we've given good advice and we've
given our advice, whether it's good or not.
I think it's good. I think people can take.
Well, just
from this.
like everything in this podcast, we are not experts. We're not.
Just personal opinions.
It's just the personal opinions that we can.
From our personal experiences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can take it or not as advice, but it's what we think. It's what we've done. It's worked with you.
For now.
Frankly, it's worked with the three of us, hasn't it? More or less, because
pretty much, yeah. And so yeah, we can take it. We're pretty sure of what we're saying.
Yeah.
Even though we're not experts.
I definitely am. I think.
Right.
I think maybe I've said something that I didn't mean to say during this podcast, but I'm pretty sure anything I've said I agree with. So
I think, yeah. Right. Well, thank you very much for having us again.
Thank you guys
Thank you
for being
us.
on here. It was a great talk and very enlightening, I think. So thank you guys very much for listening and for watching. Do you guys want to say anything before I sign off? So.
Bye.
No? Okay, perfect. So yeah, like I said, thank you very much. Like and subscribe if you don't. Wait, what?
Like and subscribe.
If you don't like and subscribe, then I'll nothing. So,
Just like and subscribe.
Yeah. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. We hope you enjoyed. And if you agree with everything that we said, then let us know in the comments. If you don't agree, let us know as well. If you think we're full of shit, then let us know. I don't think we are, but anyways, it's besides the point. So yeah, we hope you liked it, and see you guys next week. Bye-bye. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.